All right, we're learning the Farbrengen of Achron Pesach Tavshin Lamed 1970, and we're starting in middle, paragraph number 31, Al Lamed Aleph. The Rebbe says like this: we spoke in the Maimer, means the Rebbe said a Maimer during that Farbrengen. This Mashakasev Haftorah, about the Haftorah of Achron Pesach. It talks about the Haftorah from Yeshaya Navi about Mashiach. It says V'yoytze choyter migeza yishai. It's going to spurt out a beginning of a tree from the descendants of Yishai, meaning through David, talking about Mashiach. And about this Mashiach, it says V'nacha alav ruach havaya. He's going to have upon himself the spirit of God. And it says ruach havaya is one. And it says ruach chachma. He's going to have the spirit of chachma, ubina, and understanding. He's going to have the ruach, the spirit of eitzah, of giving advice for gvura and strength. That's the third ruach. Ruach das is now the spirit of das, and v'yiras Hashem, and fear of God. So it says daled pamim ruach. It says 4 times ruach with regard to Mashiach. Sheisa b'Zohar, the Zohar teaches us she'inin zeh kosher. This is connected. The 4 ruachs, the 4 spirits that we talk about the Mashiach, which is basically Havaya, Chachma, Bina, Eitzah, Gvura, even though Eitzah is a connection to Bina, and Das and Yiras Hashem. So the Zohar
that's
says
5 or 6.
No. They're saying the word Ruach says 4 times. So it says Ruach Havaya 1, Ruach Chachma Bina 2, Ruach Eitzah Gvura 3, Ruach Das and Yiras Hashem is 4. So Dal Pamim Ruach, Shisa B'Zohar, this is connected to the other prophecy of Yechezkal. It talks about the dry bones that he resurrects. That the ruach is going to come from 4 sides to give life to the dried out bones. So there's 4 ruachs coming from 4 sides, obviously referring to east, west, north, and south. So from the 4 sides comes a ruach, kind of creates a pressure, right? If wind is blowing from 4 sides. So, and that's going to give life to the dry bones, connected with the 4 ruachs that talks about Mashiach. Because there's one Torah. We must say, I can't just say that the Zohar quotes that the 4 ruachs mentions about Mashiach is connected to the 4 ruachs about the resurrection of the dead bones that Yechezkal prophesies about. That's just a Kabbalistic idea. It has to be that there's a source to that also in Nigla, the revealed parts of Torah. Ubagdama, the Rebbe says, today's the yortzeit of the Rebbe's the birthday of the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Yechezkal, and he was very much into connecting all the parts of Torah. So v'heg ubagdama, shashayches shebein chelke haTorah mudgeshes bekach shenikroim Hashem nister v'nigla. In general, we find there's 2 general parts of Torah. What's the hidden part of Torah, the secret of Torah, the in between the lines, so to say, and the revealed, what the Torah is specifically telling us. Panemius which is the nister is connected with Panemius, with the internal message, what God really is trying to tell us. V'chitzainis and what's external. Shemizah, moving from this understood. Therefore, if Chitzonius and Panemius go together, if this is the Chitzonius, this is the Panemius of the Chitzonius. If this is the revealed, this is the hidden from the revealed. So there has to be, it can't be something Zohar talks about that has nothing to do with the revealed parts of Torah. Torah, whatever it says in the revealed parts of Torah has to be found also in the hidden parts of Torah. And vice versa. Whatever is in the insides, the internals of Torah, we have to find it in some way in the Chitzonius of Torah. And this is even more so when we're referring to the Zohar specifically. That was authored by the Rashbi. That Rashbi wasn't himself just a Kabbalist, less connected, so to say, to the revealed parts of Torah. He was huge. Every time it says Reb Shimon in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, it's referring to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, unless we know otherwise.
But the Zohar, wasn't he supposed to have basically written that or come up with the idea anyway in the cave when he didn't have his svarim or anything?
Yeah, but the point the Rebbe is making is that Reb Shimon himself was both a person of revealed parts of Torah and the hidden parts of Torah. So therefore, someone who's a giant in both, even more so, we would have to say that whatever he's talking about in the hidden parts of Torah, he finds, so to say, a source or a connection in the revealed parts of Torah because he was a giant in both fields. Sometimes you have someone who's more of a who knows the law. Could say, I only know Nigla, I don't know Talmud. I can't talk to you about Kabbalah. It's not something I'm familiar with, or vice versa. So he says, we find what's a sign that we find the greatness of Reb Shimon? Shakol kushya shehiksha Reb Pinchas ben Yair. Reb Pinchas ben Yair was either his brother, his son-in-law, or his father-in-law. So whatever question that Reb Pinchas ben Yair asked, Shahayim Migdola Tanaim, Pinchas ben Yair himself was on the grade of the Tanaim, the rabbis of the Mishnah. Oh, sorry. Here it says clearly that there was a question, and the conclusion was that Pinchas ben Yair was the father-in-law of the Rashbi, so he was a great giant, and he was older than him. There's two opinions if he was just a son-in-law or father-in-law. He was smart, he was older than him, so it's, the rule is the older you are, you have a little bit, you have a little more information. Nevertheless, when he would ask a question, Rashbi would answer one of his questions. He was able to give 24 answers of a question to his father-in-law, which is the conclusion that Pinchas ben Yair was his father-in-law, about any question he had. So means to say he's a giant in the revealed parts of Torah. Therefore, we must say that anything that's in the Zohar, we have to find a hint to it some way or another, or it has to be consistent, so to say, with the revealed parts of Torah. It can't be a contradiction or inconsistent with what's said in the revealed parts of Torah. So the bottom line is, what's it have to do with what we just said now? To understand the connection between, because theoretically Yechezkal's prophecy about the dried out bones is the prophecy about the dried out bones. It doesn't necessarily tell us about the times of Mashiach, which Yeshaya Navi is talking about in Achron Pesach Saftar. So he says like this, but he says simply said there is a connection. Why? When it comes to the prophecy with regard to the dried out bones that Yechezkal prophesies about, Nemar, it says like this, so said the Lord, I'm going to put in the Ruach and give you life, vitality. And that's what happened. The Ruach came. The Ruach from the four sides. They became alive, these dried out bones. A huge army. Moed, 2 times Moed. Base from a Moed. Mivur Goydel Ilisha Bezev. Kultiter Pasha Shlach. We know when Pasha Shlach, when Kalev says Toiva Haaretz Moed Moed, we know Moed is a big concept. So the Moed that the land is good 2 times Moed. So we learned about this before. So Moed that the life, so to say, that the dry bones had is a great level of vitality. Pirsha Kasif Toiva Haaretz Moed Moed, that the Torah says when Kalev talks about the greatness of the land, that it's 2 times Moed good. So the prophecy continues. That God tells Yechezkal, what are these dried bones symbolizing? Kol Beis Yisrael, these are the Jewish people. Hema. We said our bones have dried out. So God says to the Jewish people, I'm going to bring the spirit and give you life again. You're feeling dry in life. You're feeling like it's not, you have no chayis, no vitality in your avodas Hashem. God says, I'm going to give you life. What does it mean to say? What's the greatest life God could give the Jewish people? Is to take them out of the dryness of Geula, of Galus, and bring them to the life of Geula. Then it's going to be true life. It's true life because there'll be no exile after the Geula. And this is understood. So we understand now the prophecy of the dry bones connected to Mashiach, to the prophecy of Mashiach Yeshaya, because the dry bones was about going to a place of Geula. That over there, there's 4 spirits. So therefore the Zohar says that the 4 Ruach that mentioned in Yeshaya are connected to the 4 Ruach, the Ruach that comes from 4 sides that are mentioned in the resurrection of the dry bones in the prophecy of Yechezkal. So that's that would be a simple connection between the two. And one still must ask, why does God have to do that? What is this idea of this Ruach, this Chayis of the Atzamis Yevashis, of the dried up bones? The Chayisim, I'm going to give you life. We are live people. Like it says, Asar Nikur Chaim, Yisrael Nikur Chaim. There's 10 things that are called things that are alive, And one of the things that Torah is Chaim, Hashem Vatam Elikim Chaim. So there's a lot of times you say Chaim. The Gemara mentions 10 things that are called alive. One of them is Yisrael Nikra Chaim. So we're alive. Why do we need vitality from Hashem? That to make us alive, we are alive. Achin in Yuvan, Behemshech Ma'am Rizal. The Ma'am Rizal over there continues and says, Shemei Virai Lekach Yisrael. What's the fruit that Jewish people Nikra Chaim, top of page 144. Shnemer Va'atim Hadvekim Hashem Lekechem. You cleave to your Hashem, to your God, your Lord. Chaim Kulchem Hayom, you're all alive today. Mizem moving. Shakasher Chaser Badvekes Kadosh Baruch Hu. So what makes us alive? What defines the fact? Means the fact that the Gemara, the Chazal teach us that there are 10 things that are considered alive. One of them is Yisrael. And what is the verse to support this idea that the Jewish people are considered alive? The fact that we're connected to Hashem. So there's a dependency on this. The dependency is
chasar lack. Doesn't chasar mean lack?
Sorry, say that again.
The word chasar there.
Yeah, chasar means lacking. Is removing, it's understood. When we're lacking in our cleaving to Hashem, then we're lacking our life. Our life depends on, if like the Rabbi Kiva story with the Super, he says over here, Super the Gemara B'Sef Brachas, like the Gemara says in Brachas, this Rabbi Kiva, with regard to the story of Rabbi Kiva. He was gathering people and teaching Torah, right? And caused them to get sentenced to death. Even though the evil empire of Rome passed the decree that the Jewish people should not be studying Torah. So they asked him, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I mean, there's a decree. He gave the famous example about fish. The fish must be in the water, which is the source of their vitality. So too, he says, is in the parable. The Jewish people must connect to Torah. The Torah is our life. And just like you take the fish out of the water, they're no longer alive. If you take the Jews away from Hashem, they're no longer alive. Why we compare to fish? Just like fish, take them to the dry land. Miyad mesim, they die right away. As soon as you take the Jewish people away from Torah mitzvahs, the Rebbe doesn't continue the sentence, but obviously one could understand, miyad no longer alive. So what's dry? We just said dry. Water is wet, is life. So what is something dried out? Dried out means you're not connected to Hashem. So why were these bones dried out? Because they were disconnected. So if disconnected, they had no life. Everything that the Torah says is exact. So the very fact that the Torah in the prophecy of Yechezkal refer to the bones as dried bones, that the driedness represents the fact that they're missing the living life of Torah. This goes with the example. These are the Jewish people. And like the Gemara, like the Chazal says, our life is the water, which is Torah. So what is the opposite of when we're moist with Torah? It's we're dried out. We're dried bones. But Prati says, the Rebbe says a little more. What does it mean that we have dry bones? That means not just that we're lacking water, is that it's a sign of a Jew who's distant from Torah, which is its life, like a fish that's distant from the water. And that's not a general statement. Every person has their source and their distance. There are certain people, for them, maspik perach echad shachris or perach echad. In general, the Farbrengens of Achron Pesach were avoda Farbrengens, and the Rebbe talked very personal with people. It was about the Rebbe would get down and wouldn't talk in general, would get more particular to each person about what the avodas Hashem. So here the Rebbe says you have some people that it's enough that they learn a little bit in the morning and a little bit in the evening. Kedivre Gemara, Mesachtes Menachos, as the Gemara brings down Mesachtes Menachos, Afilu leishana Adam ela perk echad shachris, perk echad arvus kayim mitzvahs la yemusher v'yomim v'layla. There's certain people that just learning a little bit in the day and a little bit in the evening is enough for them to fulfill the mitzvah that you should never lose the Torah. It should never be foreign to you. There's certain people that have to learn many hours during the day. But at the same time, that same person does a little bit of wasteful time and doesn't learn. And such a person, the Torah testifies about that person. He embarrassed the word of God. Why did you sit there and do wasteful time when you could have learned more Torah? Hakaris tikaris. The Torah talks about such a person that he or she's cut off. Hepach, which karis means the opposite of life. Both in this world and the other world. Means the Rebbe says there's the specifics and there's the general. The general is everyone's connected to Torah. Different people are connected in different ways. Where certain people a little bit is what's expected, and certain people that's what is expected is a lot more. Even a little bit of wasteful time is considered an abomination. But the point is that you have to be connected to Torah. So what causes you to be dried out is different according to different people. You compare yourself to someone else. This is different of Torah versus the performance of mitzvahs. Why? Because everyone has to do the mitzvahs equally. But Torah study depends on the kind of person you are. When it comes to the fulfillment of mitzvahs, there's a difference between anashim and nashim. There will be a difference between when are women obligated, when are they not. Kohanim, Levim, Yisrael, different if you're a Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. So here he says, but when it comes to Torah, there's no difference. Everyone has to be connected. Higam nashim, even a woman. Even though they don't have the commandment as far as the studying of the Torah, because they could sometimes be occupied in other things. Women have to know the laws that are important to women. And every mitzvah that's not time dependent, where women would be not obligated, the whole mitzvah likes to say, or any negative commandment to which every woman has to keep like man, if it's applicable to them. Also, a Kohen can't say, I'm a Kohen, I don't have to learn, or Yisrael could say, I'm not a Kohen, so I don't have to learn. Everyone has to learn, even the laws of Kohen. As far as the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, like when we learned the Rambam, we learned a lot of halachas that are not applicable to us. It's not going to apply to us in any case, even if the Mashiach comes, we're not a Kohen. And also the Kohanim have to learn about the laws that the Yisrael is obligated. For instance, gifts that go to the Kohen, that the gifts are given to the Kohen. The idea is like this. It's brought down in Svarim. It says that we know the 248 positive commandments correspond to the 448 limbs of the body. Each limb is different than the next. There's a head, there's a foot. However, Torah, even the Torah itself is one of the 248 mitzvahs to study Torah. Therefore, there is a difference, like I said initially. I understood it differently. The Rebbe was saying that actually Torah is equal to everyone, and mitzvahs has differences depending on what kind of person you are. However, on top of that, it says there's a part of the mitzvah of studying Torah that there's different. As far as the mitzvah goes, there's different obligations. Means as far as the mitzvah of studying Torah, women don't have the mitzvah of studying Torah. They have the obligation to be knowledgeable in the things that they have to do. But there's a mitzvah of learning Torah that's separate, just learning Torah. It's so it's again. This is like the blood. It brings the vitality to all the limbs equally. Let's see where the Rebbe is going with this. We know that the idea of studying Torah is more specific in the time of exile. Like it says, that God was almost ready to forgive or to overlook, so to say, put a blind eye to idol worship and indecent behavior and murder. But he wasn't ready to overlook or to turn a blind eye to someone who disgraces the Torah and doesn't study it. It says, the verse says, where is this in Yeshaya? Yirmiyahu says, why did you lose the land? Even though they worshipped idols and they didn't do proper behavior and they obviously murder, all that. So why did you lose the land? Because you left the Torah. It was that gufa. As the famous Rabbeinu Yonah teaches us, that what does it mean? That they weren't blessing on the Torah. It doesn't mean that they didn't study Torah, but they didn't bless the Torah. They didn't connect the Torah to Hashem. Surely Rabbeinu Yonah says they learn Torah all the time. It wasn't important to them. It was a study. It wasn't a holy study. They never thought to bless on it. When one learns Torah, it's not just that you study Torah. It has to be with the awareness. In the way the blessing describes the importance of Torah and how it's connected to Hashem, that's the hakara, that's the awareness a person must study Torah with. Without getting too deep. That God chose us. From all the people. He gave us His Torah. Not because God had no other choice, but He had to give us the Torah. That God chose us and gave it to us because no one else wanted it. Like it says in the famous Medrash that God went to every nation and offered it to them, and they said no. So God had no choice, right? He stuck with the Jews. When we say Torah, the giver of the Torah. That God gave us the Torah. But Noisen Torah, He's giving us constantly the Torah. Lashon Haiva, present. Both Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are higher than time, therefore the experience of the giving of the Torah is something that happens all the time. When a Jew is lacking in their connection to Torah, that our bones have dried out. 146. So the blood, there's the limbs. The limbs is the mitzvahs. One of the limbs is Torah, is Torah. But the chayis, the vitality of the person is equal, and that's the blood that flows through. And that's the Torah, that's the life of the Jew. And so when the person says, when the Jewish people say, our bones have dried out, so because every limb has to have a bone, that's one of the conditions of even that we have tongue doesn't have. But like is when we're lacking the blood, the flow. So even if you have the limb, but we're dried out bones, that's what a person's lacking Torah. The Rebbe says to say a little more. After we say to Hashem, we've lost our bones have dried out, we continue. We say, of the tikvaseinu, we've lost hope. Nigzarnu lanu, things have been already, the decrees have been set. Behegdim. The Rebbe explains, what does this mean? Why? So when we get dried out, so we lose hope about it. It brings us into status of despair of years. Behegdim. The Rebbe explains. A person may be in a situation where their bones, you feel that you're dried out. You're not right away considered like a fish that's been pulled from the sea and it's considered dead. Because if you take a fish out of the water a certain amount of time, you can't take a dead fish. You take a live fish and pull it out for a few minutes while it's still alive. You can put it back into the water and it swims away. But once it dies, putting it back in the water is not going to help the fish. It's a dead fish in the water. But so we're not exactly like the fish. We can't ever reach that point. Because a Jew could always do repentance, could always do tshuva. You never lose the name as a Jew. You can live 80 years. Even if you outlive a 70-year period. Out of the water means you've lived the whole life as a dry bones. That's opposite of the Torah. You can still do tshuva. So we never lose hope. Because tshuva is before Torah. Not only is tshuva before the individual who sinned. Ella, the word tshuva is also in head of the world. We know the famous story that one of the great sages of the Talmud that went off the derech in the times of in Yeshua ben Avo or Yeshua ben Avo in the times of the uprising of Bar Kokhba, Rabbi Akiva's colleague. So he heard a voice behind the Temple Mount that says anyone could return but Acher. So therefore he never returned. And the truth is that was itself a mistake. Even though he heard a voice proclaiming he can't return, he could return. He has to kick the door down. The door's closed. You say, so what? I'm kicking the door in. I want to do tshuva. When does a person still have hope that even if you have dry bones, you could still get resurrected? Kasher yesh, or not resurrected, you can just put it back into the water and it's alive again. As long as the person knows, there's hope. When a person knows, they could do tshuva. When a person ever thinks in their life, I've passed a certain point in my life, in the years that I've lived. I cut off myself from the water. So long ago, I have no hope. Of the tikvaseinu, we think our hope is lost. Means a person thinks, okay, but there comes a time a person thinks that there's no hope. But the Rebbe continues. Even if we know that our bones are dry and we've lost hope in ourselves, the person is still not lost. As long as we're amongst our brethren, our other Jews. Surely there's going to be someone who's going to find it within their hearts the mitzvah of loving a friend, to help you return to Torah, to the path of Torah. The idea is, our rabbis have taught us, whenever you put 10 Jews together, is the presence of the Shekhinah. What does this mean? We know that it says kol, anytime there's 10 Jews together. It doesn't say that they're doing anything. Just 10 Jews together. Already the Shekhinah is there. Even if they're not doing Torah mitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe clearly says that in the Gersh Kodesh. Even if they're not speaking Torah, 10 Jews alone together, 10 neshamas brings God. Because there's another statement. It says that 10 Jews who learn together, God is there. Aside from that, any 10 Jews together, there's the Shekhinah. In that statement, there's two statements. One statement talks about when they're learning. That's one kind of Shekhinah. And one kind of God, so to say, be presence. But there's a general presence, even any 10 Jews together, no matter what they're doing. That when there's 10 Jews together, what is this? So what does it help that the Shekhinah is there if they're not talking Torah or not doing mitzvahs? Just by being with 10 Jews together, it's brought down. God kind of inspires you. You're 10 Jews together, do something. You get extra strength and help in your service. 10 Jews together is enough of a reason why a thought of tshuva should pop into your mind. Even those yesterday, up until yesterday, even a moment before now, they were totally opposite. They weren't thinking about Torah mitzvahs. Their ways of things were opposite of Torah mitzvahs. The very fact that with the 10 Jews together, that they should still have thoughts of tshuva, maybe they'll repent. So the Rebbe is saying that even if you feel that as an individual you've lost hope and you dried up bones, but by being amongst your brothers and sisters, that's enough of a gathering that the Shekhinah kind of trigger and start that you should get back on the path. When it comes to public ideas, when it comes to redemption, Hengula's clause, whether it's a general redemption or Gula Mitzara Pratis, or a person who needs to be redeemed from a particular galus, We go after the majority. That's why we have Farbrengens. One of the great things about a Farbrengen is that it says that what a Malach Mechol can't do, even the great angel, a Chassidish Farbrengen could do. Why? When you sing together, that we go with the majority. If the majority wishes someone well, that could turn the tithing, and that's how the Gzeira is going to be. That's how the decree is going to be. God blesses this person and gives a flow of Gashmias. That's why it says don't sit alone. A lot of people like to sit alone. Don't sit alone. Be amongst other Jews. Because just being amongst other Jews, you're in a setting where things can happen to the positive.
Yeah, well, with all of the communicable diseases around that affected it, but now with the attacks that are going on, Jews want to be together.
Yeah, well, that's sometimes God pushes us in that direction.
External things that was affected.
Yeah, the God is constantly. It's like when you put when water flows down, you put all these different things to direct the water. God directs how things work out. Not just that God blesses the person when they're together with others to have blessings of spiritual and material blessings, but God also, that's a good setting for a person to have an awareness and awakeness of tshuva. The Rebbe says, when is this all applicable? When you at least stay in the community. You have some people who show up, just stay in the community. When you cut yourself off from the community, that alone is not a good idea. You say, you cut yourself off, you say, I'm not part of the majority. He doesn't or she doesn't have the benefit to go after the majority. Whenever there's a setting, God sometimes just looks at the numbers. And if the numbers are positive, that's already good. You're part of you get taken in with the majority. Right? The laws of mixing of good and bad. You can't have a drop of milk and a piece of meat far from each other and say the milk is nullified to the meat. It's only if they're together. The market might be whether it's in space or knowledge. When you're separate, then you're your own entity. You can't go according to the majority. If the majority is good, you get swallowed up in the good. That's why it says in the verse about the dry bones. We say we're dry. We lost hope. Therefore the decrees happen. What's nigzarnu lanu? How did bad decrees happen? Because you cut yourself off from the community. What's going to help this person? He or she can't get kind of washed together with the majority. So how's this person going to get alive again? So the Rebbe said, nevertheless, even a person who sins and leaves the way, that we fall under the three negatives. We dry from Torah. We've lost hope. We've reached the level where it's so part of our life to be away from Torah that we've lost hope. And the Gzeira happened because we're no longer part of a community. God says, I'm not like you said. God made it that you're going to have to go back to the community with a strong hand. That's what the Navi says. When the Jewish people said, we want to assimilate. Yechezkal says, with a strong hand, I'm going to rule over you. Kamar Mazal, like the Chazal teaches, it's all happening. The Chazal says that when the Jewish people are going to try to assimilate, it's going to come a king that's going to have decrees like Haman, that the decrees are going to force the Jews to go back to the positive. The circumstances of what they're going to live in are going to be so uncomfortable. Like you said, the Jewish people are going to have to reunite together. Because God says, I'm not letting anyone go. I'm not letting someone fall through the cracks. Every Jew is going to be put back in place. I start. I'm going to give you life again. God comes down and says, I'm not, you may have lost hope. You may have felt that the decree has been passed. I'm not going to be part of that. That's what it means, resurrection of the dead. This is what it says. that Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Lam Haba, everyone has a portion in the world to come. Everyone's going to be part of the resurrection of the dead. Even if a person screams about their own situation, I'm dry, I lost hope, the decree's already been passed, it's too late. God says it's not too late. The Rebbe continues. What's the connection? If I'm not mistaken, Atzmos Yevashos is the Haftorah of Shabbos Chol Hamoed. It's interesting. Shabbos Chol Hamoed, today's Haftorah, meaning this week's Haftorah, is, if I'm not mistaken, is Yevashos Atzamas. Let me just check. Yeah, Yechezkal. It's Yechezkal 36. So that's the Rebbe's connecting the Shabbos Chol Hamoed Haftarah with the Haftarah of Achron Pesach. Why do we read it on Shabbos Chol Hamoed? It's brought down the Shulchan Aruch b'Shem Rav Haigon, the great Reb Haigon. Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach Maftirim Atzamis Yevashos. Rav Haigon says that on Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach we learn about the dry bones. Lefi Shetchisa Mesim. Because when is the resurrection? When is this going to happen? The resurrection of the dead, which means that God's Ani Pesach, I start. Even if you feel you have lost hope, God says, I'm not allowing you to fall out.
It's the fifth child that's not at the table.
Not at the table, exactly.
Yeah.
When is the resurrection of the dead going to happen? It's brought down in the month of Nisan. I think Reb Haigon himself says this. So too, that the why do we prophesize? Why do we read about the prophecy of Gog and Magog? Is because when's the war going to start in Tishrei? When did the Jewish people get attacked on Shmini Atzeres? Achadayin ain't moving. The Rebbe says it's still not understood. Imishum shetches hamesim asad asid aliyos. Benisan hari benisan yesh shleishim yom. V'lam aftim atzamas yeveish v'shabbos chol hamoed pesach dafka. Why, if you want to say that the reason Reb Haigon says that we read the prophecy of Yechezkal and Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, and I don't always think that Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, there's 30 days in Nisan. Who says the resurrection of the dead is connected to Dafka, specifically Chol Hamoed Pesach? V'hegdim. Makar Advarim, the Rebbe says, we're going to go, let's see the answer. This is an interesting question. So it's Makar Advarim, and why does Reb Haigon go and say that Tchias HaMesim is going to happen? What's the source? It's going to happen in Nisan. We find in the tractate of Sanhedrin that says, we're about to learn this in our class, Shafilu Klioftra Malchusa Amra Yadanu Dechayish Chivi Shamesim Chaim Dechsiva Yatzitzu Meir Gesav Asada. I have to check what the Gemara says. That even Kiluftera Malchusa, the queen or the kingdom of Kiluftera, she's gonna say Yadanu Dechayish Chivi, that there's this that the dead are going to be alive. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Let's see. She compares the very fact that there's grass growing in the earth. The example, just like there's grass growing, so too grows out of the earth, so too the people are going to come out of the earth alive. What is the connection? Even though the Rambam says that an example doesn't have to fit exactly, only sometimes the general point. Those who disagree with the Rambam, that's not just enough to say that the fact that there's life coming out of the earth, so too there's going to be the dead are going to come out of the earth. The Rebbe says that those who don't agree with the Rambam. So when's the grass start growing is in the month of Nisan, the month of the spring, after the winter's passed. When this queen, whatever the story is, we'll have to learn about it. This talks about the resurrection of the dead connected to the grass growing out of the earth, which is the time. The season is the time of the spring, which is Chodesh Nisan. Always has to be in the spring. That could be the source. That Gemara could be the source that Tchis HaMesim is going to happen in Nisan. And why? And once we're talking about Nisan, specifically connected to Pesach. Grass could grow even if there's not a lot of rain. Even without rain at all. the dew alone is enough. Those who know agriculture to help the grass grow. Right? And when do we bless the tal? The first day of Pesach. That the gates, the doors of tal of dew open on Pesach. And when did God bless? Yitzchak bless Amital Shemayim from the dew in heaven was on Pesach. The blessing we know is the first day of Pesach.
In Seattle, it just so happens that in April this year, when Pesach was later, well, the rain didn't come the normal amount earlier in April, and now we're getting the rain. Yeah.
He says, that's why we started saying tal on the first day of Pesach, even in Seattle while it's still raining. And we know tal is connected to the resurrection of the dead because it says tal that God's going to use dew to resurrect the dead. So let's want to see his answer. Where does he get to? Why is it Shabbos Chol Hamoed? Let's just finish off chapter 39. What does this all mean in internal? Let's see.
Wait a minute. You're not continuing Lamed Fet. Where are you?
Give me hold on 1 second. We'll try to finish this whole Sicho, might as well. Give me 1 second.
Lamed Fet, V'yesh Lahosif, etc.
Yes. V'yesh Lahosif. Yes, V'yesh Lahosif. It continues. Okay. Chag Pesach Gufa Maftir Matzamis Yeveshes. Why do we say it on the Shabbos of Chag Pesach? Why don't we say it on Yom Tov? If we're saying Tal and it's connected to the resurrection of the dead, and that's all Pesach the Shaviv, so we should have said the first day Yom Tov should be the Haftarah about Atzamis Yeveshes. Why is it Shabbos Chol Hamoed? We could have said it in any of the 4 days of Yom Tov. Shabbos Chol Hamoed. Why do we do it on Shabbos Chol Hamoed? The Rebbe says I haven't seen a clear answer. We know that every year Pesach has 2 first days and 2 last days in Chutz La'aretz. Not every year has a Shabbos Chol Hamoed. It could be that there's not a Shabbos Chol Hamoed. All the days of the week of Chol Hamoed are weekdays. The first day of Pesach falls out on Shabbos. Azai ain't Shabbos Chol Hamoed, then there's no Shabbos Chol Hamoed. The things that are every year, we have to read about every year. But Shabbos Chol Hamoed, that's not always, it's not kavua. That's specifically when we say about the dry bones. Why? Because resurrection of the dead is only going to happen once. So the things that are always continuously happening over and over again, this experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the things that we talk about in the first 2 and last 2 days, is something that happens all the time. Hey, Ariel, for the last few minutes. But something that Yetzias Mason that only happens once in a while. It's going to only happen, once. So therefore, so to the war of Gog and Magog. We don't read about it the first or last 2 days. The war of Gog and Magog we also only learn about. We read about on Shabbos Chol Hamoed. It doesn't have to happen. There will only be one war of Gog and Magog. Therefore, we specifically don't read about these things on Kavua days, on days that happen always. Things that are happening consistently, we read about consistent things. Things that are a one-time thing, we only read about once in a while, or when it happens on a Shabbos Chol Hamoed. Because it's not always a Shabbos Chol Hamoed. There can be a scenario where there's also not a Shabbos Chol Hamoed sukkahs. Well, the higher. According to those who have the customs to read about the Song of Songs on Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, in main Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, so then we read Shir Shirim on a day that falls out on Shabbos, whether either the 7th or the 8th day of Pesach. Shir Shirim you always have to read. So if you can't read Shabbos Chol Moed, you push it off to the second days. And Shir Shirim is also connected with the giving of the Torah. Like it says, the whole leaving of Egypt was connected to Yetzias Mitzrayim. Therefore, we always read the Song of Songs on Pesach. But at Haftarah, if there's no Shabbos Chol Moed, we don't read it. It's not like we push off the Haftarah for another time. So too with the Melcham of Goy Gumagay. Shamirasi b'Shabbos Chol Moed ein b'chol shana. Given Shazau inin chat b'ami. Okay, so therefore that answers the question. Now he says, as he finishes off, what's this mean to us? When a person reaches the point that says, I'm dried out, I've lost hope, the decree's been passed, it's too late. The Rebbe says, you can't, it's an amazing word the Rebbe is saying, we can't even read in a way of kaviyas, that it's a set thing, that there's always a scenario that we come and say that our bones are dried out and we lost hope and the decree has been passed. Therefore, we put that haftorah in a passing Shabbos. Either we say it or we don't say it. It doesn't have to happen that we reach such a level in our life. A Jew can't and doesn't really want to be separate from God. As the Alter Rebbe says, and a person is ready if he or she has to give their life al Kiddush Hashem. This idea, that's an exception. That a person reaches the level that he or she says, I'm dried out, I've lost hope, the decree's been passed, it's too late. That's an exception to the rule. But nevertheless, even if such an unregular occurrence happens, that a person may reach the level in their life that they say, I'm dried out, and I've lost hope, and the decree's been passed, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, God says no. Ani Pesach, I'm going to give you life. You get life and you stand up on your feet. 2 times ma'oid, a great people. That when Rashi says that we've lost a lot of people, Rashi says, even only one maidservant died. But God says even anything that you've lost is to me a majority. It's a lot of people. It means that's how important even a single person is to Hashem. We're ready to make a storm to save one Jew. Therefore, that affects that God becomes king over all the Jewish people. He takes all the Jewish people. To the land of good and plenty. With the coming Mashiach, the Rambam, like the Rambam says, that it's going to take Hashem to gather the Jewish people. It's not going to happen by anyone else. All right. Beautiful Sicho. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you.
And a good Yom Tif for the second day. Take care.